Welcome to Sherlock Mondays. I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we're going on a biblio-venture through the stories of Sherlock Holmes. This is episode 17, The Adventure of Silver Blaze. And joining me as co-host is Monica Schmidt. Hi, Monica.
Hey Ed, how you doing tonight?
Good. We are both appropriately hat-weared tonight. This is one of the stories where he wears the traveling the cloth cap or
Yes,
whatever.
the cloth ear flap
It's
cap.
the deer
Yes.
stalker, and you've got a hat on too.
Oh yes, I'm rocking my Gorin Brothers flat cap today just because my I don't want the audience to see my hair. Today it's a little messy. So
And I
it's a hat
recently
day.
I recently saw you at the Baker Street Irregular Weekend in New York City, where we all had a grand time.
That we did. It's among my favorite 5 day or my favorite 5 days of the year, which I think I've stretched into six, and I think some people sometimes stretch into seven.
Well, I have we'll talk about something about that in a
Yeah.
few minutes before we get to the story, because what we do here on Sherlock Mondays is deduce, decipher, and dissect Arthur Conan Doyle's stories about the world's first consulting detective, Sherlock Holmes, and his able assistant, Dr. John Watson, in a kind of conversational annotation, and touch on other little Sherlockian things along the way, too. If you are watching live right now, I ask you to please like and subscribe to these videos and also have fun in the live chat. If you're watching the recording, also, like and subscribe to the videos. Sherlock Monday is also an audio podcast. And thank you to all of our podcast listeners. If there's any new viewers out there right now or new listeners to the audio podcast, you can watch all the past episodes on our YouTube channel or listen to all the past podcasts, obviously. But we do a story a week, so don't feel like you have to catch up all you want. Watch them all. That's great. Listen to them all. But really, it's one story. That's what you need to do for this week. Read a story and we'll talk about it and join in the fun. I would also ask everyone to please consider making a donation to the Rosenbach Museum and Library. If you've already donated or joined as a member, thank you so much. That's how we get to do this show, because of your support for the Rosenbach. So if you've not already donated or become a member or can donate even more, I invite you to do so, and thank you. Before we start tonight, I got caught too, because we were chatting a little before the show, and I didn't get my drink made. And
Oh man, I apologize, Ed.
oh no, I'm finishing up the drink right now.
Yes,
Um,
finish it. I'm drinking sparkling water tonight. I will take ownership of this. I caught the Rona while we were or at least I was exposed to the Rona while we were in New York, and so I'm in recovery right now. And I didn't see clients. I saw everybody via telehealth. Do not worry, ethics. This has the best camera setup as compared to my home office. So it's
yes, so you're there.
so I'm here. Plus I can
Well,
ice here.
the drink that I'm drinking tonight, definitely, and perhaps some of you, every episode we feature a Sher-locktail designed by our good friend and co-host Mary Alcaro. You can find the recipes in the YouTube description for the episode, and I send the recipe out via email every week if you're registered for the show. And you can register at the Sherlock Mondays homepage on rosenbach.org. And tonight is The Dog in the Nighttime. And it's a take on the Dark and Stormy. It's gin and rum and ginger beer, some sugar, lime, some bitters in there. But I've never mixed gin and rum before. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever designed a cocktail with gin and rum. I've done either or, but I don't mix them. So it's delicious, and it's topped with ginger beer anyway. And so it's
I'm partial to gingers. Long-standing joke is my husband who doesn't have much left on top, but the little that he has left is still tinged ginger. So an on-running joke that my ginger is superior. So all the ginger things.
we were just in New York City having a grand old time, and I One of the things we did, one of the first things early on is the Arthur Conan Doyle Society meets at
Hmm.
Mysterious Bookshop and has a little horse race. And that you were involved in this year. You had a horse running, but
Oh yes.
first
My
let people know what the ACD Society is, of which I am also a member.
Okay, so the ACD Society, or Arthur Conan Doyle Society, so acdsociety.com, is an organization that celebrates the world of Arthur Conan Doyle. So, as Sherlockians, we tend to be very narrowly focused on one particular area of Conan Doyle's writing, so the Sherlock Holmes stories and anything that's relatively kind of adjacent to that. But Doyle was prolific, and there's so much out there that doesn't get attention or as much attention because of the fame of the detective. And so the ACD Society was founded in part to, shed a light on the rest of Arthur Conan Doyle's work, and celebrate that as well. And this is the third year that they've done the annual Doylean honors, which are in different categories regarding basically excellence in either like fiction and poetry or the visual arts regarding Arthur Conan Doyle. So there's that. And then this is the second annual running of the Wessex Cup, which is the most madcap fun that one can have in a bookstore in 30 minutes. Uh, Essentially, it is a bracketed race between various horses. But oh man, I wish I would have brought my horse with me.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I
It
didn't. Yeah, yeah,
these
how did I do that?
I should have thought of that. But it's basically a little wind-up horse and jockey that are on wheels, and basically you can set on a racetrack and they go head to head to basically the finish line. And so it's a bracketed race, until there's a winner. And I was the owner and trainer for the Spider, the
Spider
horse.
was the name of your horse.
Basically, yeah, basically it's my stable is Spider. And Peggy McFarland or actually who lives in Toronto, who's lovely and amazing, and is actually the Sherlockian I want to be when I grow up. Um, Peggy is wonderful and artistic and actually customizes each of these horses and jockeys. And so, because of my BSI investiture as Julia Stoner, Spider was decked out with spider web motif as well as some snakes and a few other odds and ends, which was lovely, but I think it might have thrown off some of the balance because my horse basically bucked my jockey from like from the get-go, from the starting gate. And now my horse is glue.
Yeah, your horse didn't.
Did not perform, but that is okay. It's not about the performance. It's about of supporting a good organization.
It's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. And I put the ACD Society link in the chat there. Check it out. You can read about the Wessex Cup on there, that their version of the Wessex Cup. But there's also a real horse race, um,
Yeah.
and something associated with the Silver Blaze race that you are involved with this year, especially because I think you're talking there. You're giving a
Um, yeah, sort of. So, I should probably kind of go back here. There are multiple organizations, multiple Sherlock Holmes societies, including the Baker Street Irregulars that run Silver Blaze races. It's basically going to a racetrack and kind of, setting a day at the races and then having a specific race or a horse designated as Silver Blaze for the race. However, there's the one that we're speaking of at this moment is the Chicago Silver Blaze race,
yes.
which happens to be, I believe, the longest running, continually running Silver Blaze race. There's one that's in Baltimore that's been running for many years. The one in Saratoga, which is kind of BSI connected, is it happens every several years. But the Chicago Silver Blaze race has been going on, I believe, for over 50 years. It's the longest running of one of its kind. And this year, the Watsonians of Chicago are collaborating with the Tourists International of Chicago, which is one of the Sherlock Holmes societies, to do a like a Chicago weekend. So on Friday night, there's going to be the tourists event, and I'm the speaker for that event. And then on Saturday, there's going to be the running of the Silver Blaze race.
What's the date?
It is the last weekend in June. Give
Yeah.
me 1 second. We are going to run. It would be the 28th of October, so the 28th of June, as well as the 29th of June. Under normal circumstances, I'd be, probably about 30 miles south of where I currently sit at Riverside, Iowa's Trek Fest, the future birthplace of Captain Kirk, which
Ooh, yeah.
happens to occur that same weekend. But I'm giving up my other nerdy pursuit in order to support Chicago and the tourists, and I'm very excited for that.
In our chat, there's a Tourist International. You probably know who that is, and
Oh yeah, probably Rudy.
and says 65 this year. So
Mm. Thank you. Actually, probably Jonathan Schimberg. My apologies. Yeah, Jonathan is the gentleman who actually runs the tourists, and he's a rock star. Um, but yeah, 65 years. See what I mean? Like, this is like it's got history here, and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
they've put together a Facebook page for this year's program, and they've just started putting it together. And I shared that link, but as more info becomes available, we'll share that link on shows in the future. Um, People from all over watching us tonight too, Monica.
Mhm.
Philly, obviously, Richmond, uh, Oconomowoc. Did I say it?
Ah, yes, my
There.
Oconomowoc.
Is it Oconomowoc or
It
Ocon?
is
It is.
Oconomowoc.
It is Oconomowoc.
I'm native Cheddar, man. I'm from Milwaukee originally, and we'll just say is that never trust a Wisconsinite that can't pronounce Oconomowoc
All righty.
or Ashwaubenon or many of the other delightful native or cities that take their name from Native American phrases.
We've got Madison, Wisconsin, Washington, D.C., Beaufort, North Carolina, Southwest Michigan, Evanston, Wyoming, Haddonfield, Italy,
Ooh.
Florida, Minnesota, New Zealand. So people from all over the world watching this show. So thank you all for watching the show. It is so much fun doing this. We should get to our story tonight.
Yes.
I have shared a PDF facsimile of The Adventure of Silver Blaze as it was originally published in December 1893 of the Strand Magazine. You can download that on the Rosenbach's Sherlock Mondays page. So that was December. The last story, Copper Beaches, was June. So the original Strand readers had to wait 6 months
Ooh.
for a new Sherlock story. You guys only had to wait a week. They had to wait 6 months for one. And in that time, Doyle was very busy. He's writing lots of things, but he also made a trip to Norway with Jerome K.
Mhm.
Jerome, famous
Mhm.
author of Three Men in a Boat and an author I love, and has a book, Idle Thoughts of an Idle Fellow, in which
Mhm.
the entire giant paragraph dedication is to his pipe. So I have to like this author a lot, and he's very funny. But he goes to Norway for recreational sports, which he loves. He actually starts skiing and loves it, and he's kind of introducing it to more people. He's using his little bit of fame at the time to introduce people to skiing. In September that year, story by the name of Lot Number 249 is published in Harper's Magazine, a mummy story, which is a fantastic gothic horror story from Doyle. I mentioned it because there was recently a Mark Gatiss adaptation of it, and the
On
Ghost
the
of
BBC.
Christmas,
Is it available for streaming here in America?
only on BritBox. And,
Ah,
and there's a
BritBox.
nice little Sherlockian thing in there that I won't tell people what it is. Just watch it. October,
Mm-hmm.
The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes is published, which is the first 12 stories from from the Strand, from Scandal and Bohemia through Copper Beaches. It's published by George Nunes in the UK, who publishes the Strand. and Harper Brothers in the United States. There's I'll share the covers of
Mhm.
these, and right here. This is the cover of the British
Oh,
Adventures.
yes.
And note too
So
that
pretty.
he's got the Strand Library right on the front, the Strand Libraries on the side. So no tell I mean, we know you know where these stories come from, people. And it has all of the Paget illustrations in it, all 100 and for the 12 stories, 104 illustrations.
Hmm.
The US version looked like this, the cover, and
Mm.
it only has 16 illustrations. Is that correct? 16 illustrations.
Yeah, I think
It has this
so.
fascinating design on the cover with it says Gordius Notice, and this is like the Gordian knot here. Here's the sword that will cut it. And
Mhm.
I started asking around about this because I hadn't
I
noticed it
mean,
or even
I'm
seen it.
fascinated by it. I'm not going to lie. I've never seen an American first edition, let alone this image. And
I
this.
wondered, yeah, I wondered if it was something that Harper Brothers had used on other books or not. It doesn't appear to be, and it really appears to be designed for this book. And it's this kind of crime and punishment thing going around. Here's a judge, here's a Bobby. Um, there's you see the Darby's here and the
Mhm.
key. This is one of those neck things attached to two wrist,
Mhm.
cuffs. Um,
Yep.
I'm not sure what this is. It looks kind of like an alien from War of the Worlds, the tripods, but it's not. I'm pretty sure this is maybe something that goes around the neck. I don't know. I'll have to find out what this is.
Actually, that almost looks like keys on a key ring.
Is that all it is? And I'm thinking something even more. You're right. It is keys.
Yeah, it
And
looks like keys on a key ring.
here's one of those police lanterns. So it's and they use a similar um emblem for the memoirs when they published that, but from what someone told me, there's some changes in it. So it looks
Hmm.
like this is the way Harper had wanted to put it out, Adventures. Um, and so Doyle is publishing away here, and his son, Kingsley, his first son, is born in November. He already has a daughter. Kingsley is born in November. But in August, it's interesting. In the Strand Magazine, they don't have. I mean, the Sherlock stories are famous now. Doyle's getting very famous, becoming a well-known author. So they need some Doyle content. They're running some other
Hmm.
detective and mystery stories in the issues. But in August, they publish a piece called "A Day with Dr. Conan Doyle," and it is, you
Okay.
know, it's like an interview profile that they
Hmm.
talk to him. They visit his house. It has illustrations and photographs from his home, his wife, and his child at the time. Um, and it's actually fascinating because it's Doyle's kind of it's I mean it's his first brush with fame and the interviews of his first brush with fame, and he's talking about the Sherlock stories
Hmm.
as if he kind of likes them still.
Yeah, they just made him famous
As we've seen, he, kind of falls out of love with this Doyle's
later
the
on.
Sherlock stories because he wants to write other things.
Yeah.
He's actually already falling out of love. He tried to kill him off already with Copper Beaches and then decided to keep it going. But he had this one quote here, which I thought was fascinating. Um, I'll put this in the a link to the text for this here too oh it's already up there.
Okay.
The He mentions that he's talking about Dr. Joseph Bell, and then there's a letter at the end of this piece from Bell about Doyle and Sherlock.
Hmm.
But what Doyle says about Bell, this is how he describes Dr. Bell. He says, he was continually before me, his sharp, piercing gray eyes, eagle nose, and striking features. There he would sit in his chair with fingers together. He was very dexterous with his hands, and just look at the man or woman before him. He was most
Hmm.
kind and painstaking with the students, a real good friend. And I know he bases Sherlock's abilities on Bell, but
Hmm.
this also sounds like he's describing him too, right?
Yep. Yep.
The eagle nose, the piercing eyes, sitting with his fingers together,
Hmm.
which is a frequent Sherlock pose when he's talking, when he's listening to people, and
Yeah.
the kind and painstaking with students are real good friends. Something people forget that Sherlock is, and you realize when you do the stories, he's very compassionate. He's compassionate towards Watson. He's compassionate
Yes.
towards his clients, as long as he likes them. If they're going to be snooty, then he's
Hmm.
off-putting with them. So, but I thought that was interesting, and that's in that piece as well. So I recommend people to read that little portrait of him right at the time that we're reading these stories.
Yeah.
The adventure comes out. This is adventure 13. Oh, and even the cover of this issue
Hmm.
is I'll share that too. This is available on the PDF because if you remember, notice the top here, this is the double Christmas number.
Ooh.
This is December. And with a colored plate. So that's one of the special things
Hmm.
about it. It's got a large colored plate. Um, and but it's a double Christmas number. It's about, I think each issue of the Strand was around 40-ish pages, and this one is it's not quite double that, but it's I think it's an extra 30 pages is what it is. Um and it is Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's 100. Usually it's usually about 100, and this one's about
Okay.
130 pages. I'm pretty sure
Okay.
that's the numbers. 100, and now it's 130. But in any case, the fact that this is the Christmas issue, there's no Christmas story in it for anybody thinking like that's what they meant.
Hmm.
It's That's not always expected with a Christmas number of a magazine at the time. It usually just meant extra content. But for the Strand, what it meant, what they were doing was they've got the return of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
They they could have published this story at any time. They could have published it in August, I think, as early as August, and they have chosen not to. They're saving it for the Christmas issue.
Okay.
So that's the selling point for this issue. If you've been waiting for Sherlock since June, now in the new Christmas number.
Well, I mean, and I mean, I kind of have to laugh a little bit as I'm thinking about the BBC's current custom of having Christmas specials for
Yeah.
everything. So Christmas tie-ins says, the person who thoroughly enjoyed the Doctor Who Christmas special. So,
Well, yeah, and I did too. I loved it actually. The uh Now our days, like if you say Christmas, you feel like you have to tie the content in with actual holiday.
mhm.
That was not the case in the 19th century.
Fair
They
point.
just knew that, they could do. I mean, sometimes it was a scary story people wanted at Christmas, especially in
Hmm.
England. That's a Christmas kind of story. But yeah, it's a Sherlock story is what you're getting people for Christmas. So I'm sure there was lots of huzzahing.
Yeah.
That there was a new Sherlock Holmes story. And what a story it is, The Adventure of Silver Blaze. We got
Oh,
two.
this is, I mean, this happens to be a great story, and also it has one of the most quoted lines
Yep.
in all of the canon, and it's quoted in so many different contexts, ranging from the law to what there was a Broadway, actually there was a book that was named after
Uh-huh.
after it, which then became a Broadway play. I mean, it's everywhere.
It's such a great story. And it begins, and oddly enough, only it starts in dialogue. And it's just actually
Which
only
is rare.
it's only the third story so far that has started with someone speaking. Sherlock once, Watson once, and now this one. But both of those were kind of like a little like I'm telling you something, and it's like a little paragraph of speech. This starts almost as if as if a conversation is going on. That's the first time
Yeah,
that I've
it's
heard.
kind of we are busting in the middle of a
Yeah.
conversation. We're hitting the ground running. The action starts immediately, which is different, and I like it.
I am afraid, Watson, that I shall have to go. And, and we're going to Dartmoor. And this kind of usually you get the statement of the case first and the reason why they would need to go somewhere. But here it's, in media res almost. Um,
Yes.
it is Watson is right away, not surprised because this
Hmm.
extraordinary case that everybody has been talking about in England about the horse that's gone missing, and he's so happy that they're going to do something about it. I can't pass by that, my companion had rambled about the room with his chin upon his chest and his brows knitted, charging and recharging his pipe with the strongest black tobacco, the notorious black shag, most likely that he's
Yes.
smoking. But this is what he does when he thinks. This
Yeah.
is to think. You need to.
It's it's
You,
it's his version of meditation. The smoking is the you know, it's his mantra.
and the every newspaper that every fresh newspaper that comes out is being sent up to him, uh,
Hmm.
which is a lot of people. Now you think like, oh, what's that like two papers a day? It's like 15
Hmm.
papers a day being published in multiple issues, and so there dozens of issues are coming up to him this day here, so he can read all the news about this. Um, isn't this nice too? What does he say? He says, Watson says, I should be most happy to go down with you
Hmm.
if I should not be in the way.
Oh yes, Watson's still soft stepping the
Yeah.
idea that Holmes might actually want him on a case.
Holmes says
Even after all this time.
yeah, you would confer a great favor upon me by coming, and then bring your excellent field glass. I don't know, maybe he just wants a good pair of binoculars. But they're going to go. Watson was hoping for this, and they're going, and then they get on the train, and here's the description, then I'll share one of the most famous Paget
Hmm.
illustrations.
Oh, one of my favorites.
It's our logo in
Yeah.
it's in our logo for Sherlock Mondays. A first-class carriage flying along en route for Exeter while Sherlock Holmes, with his sharp, eager face framed in his ear-flapped traveling cap, dipped rapidly into the bundle of fresh papers which he had procured at Paddington. And then he offers Watson the cigar case, and then the picture
Oh, one of
is,
my
I mean,
favorites.
this Paget one is just so well known. It's frequently used as where you like we use it for our, to make our logo out of. But here it is in the midst of the text. There they are,
Oh
and
yes.
note
Oh,
that they're in the smoking car. Um, I have looked in vain. I keep looking for the smoking car when I get on the train, and I just can't seem to find it. I don't understand why. Um, I guess I'm just not looking well enough for the smoking car.
yeah. So I was just
Um,
gonna say, sorry, Ed. I feel like I should cue that trombone
now it
here.
would be the no smoking car. I know.
That's
Um,
all the non-smoking cars now. So
Um, but here they are in the I like these little like side desks here that the chairs have. I don't think I've
yeah.
noticed. I know it's an armrest, but it looks like it's a flat surface that you can put things on.
Yeah.
As
Almost like what they have like in like little university desks or whatnot,
yeah.
some surface. I like that.
Watson with a cigar and Holmes, explaining the case to him with his hands pointing out the different points that he'll do in just a moment. Um, and then this is obviously the deerstalker. So the passage says the cloth traveling cap with ear flaps, which maybe Paget gave him the idea to push that further because you remember in the
Hmm.
what's the story that it's in? Boscombe Valley
Yeah,
Mystery.
Boscom.
He wears the cloth traveling cap, and Paget then draws what we call a deer stalker, and but it doesn't necessarily say it's this hat. And now
Hmm.
Doyle has described it even further to match this hat. So
Hmm.
perhaps he was even influenced by Paget's illustration of it earlier.
I mean, stranger things have happened. Plus, I mean, this is where sometimes we'll just say there's that interplay between illustrator and author. I mean, we'll just say there's a lot of that goes on with Doyle, where Doyle is inspired by something that someone else creates and then kind of incorporates that into the stories. This is why we have Billy the Page Boy later on.
Yeah. And it's also, as we
Mm.
mentioned in the last story, the Boscombe Valley thing, this is the hat you wear out into the country. So
Exactly. It's either
all
this hat or that hat.
all the Sherlock stories where they're set in the city and the movies and TV that he puts on that they wouldn't have worn that in the city. So it's not a city hat. It's country
No.
hat right here. It's my country mode. That's what I'm wearing today. I'm in the country today with Sherlock. Um, also, oh boy, I got to share that image again because
Please do.
what's fascinating is, and in the other pictures you can see it as well. It's a hoodie. This cloak that he's wearing, this long coat, has a hood that he could then
Mhm.
put up. So it's a Sherlock hoodie, which I don't think I ever really put together that it was a hoodie. You
Oh,
can see it.
yeah, I was lucky enough. Actually, there was a couple of years ago, there was an exhibit at the Grolier of Glenn Maranker's personal Sherlock Holmes collection, and
Uh-huh.
that illustration is among them, and it is striking in real life.
Here it is. You can really see the hoodie here.
Yep.
So that's what he's wearing. All the illustrations in this story are fantastically detailed and
Hmm.
really, really well done. Um, Even to the point where like I saw this guy in the background of this illustration here when they're at the train station. They meet Ross and Gregory. I know we're jumping ahead here, but
Hmm.
there's just this train porter behind him here with a little hand cart to carry people's
Yeah,
luggage.
it's so detailed.
I looked
And even
back
the
through
expression on the guy's face.
I looked back through all the other illustrations, and I think I found one other illustration where he will have like a background character who's not
Hmm.
associated with the story at all. And this is a rare thing. And this kind of, it's just a level of detail that he's into. Maybe he just had a few months off and now he's just going for broke and really, but I found the level of detail in the faces, the expressions, the clothing, everything in this particular issue was started to be a step ahead of what we've a step more in depth than what we've seen for the illustrations and the other stories so far.
Yep. No, I love it. I love it. Oh,
Well, they're still on the train,
yes.
right? And Holmes has to. Well, I like this because instead of his usual Dr. Bell trick that he pulls either on Watson or the client, here it's
Hmm.
just a simple. Oh, I see we're traveling at 53 and a half miles an hour.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
um, and And Watson says, "Oh, I hadn't observed the quarter mile posts." And then Holmes is like, "No, I haven't, but it's the telegraph posts, and I did the calculation. I've read it was in the Les Klinger one. Like it's a pretty like he like it's a it's a pretty accurate
Hmm.
estimation too of how fast they would have been traveling. Holmes has it right here. He understands how
Yeah.
to do this. Doyle understood how to do this.
Well, I mean, considering how many trains the fella took, and the amount of time that he probably had to waste on those trains, a man like Doyle would do those calculations.
Well, he mentions the murder that has happened. He tells Watson now it was John Straker who was murdered, the
Hmm.
trainer of the horse, and the horse Silver Blaze has disappeared. Um,
No.
he says for Holmes, it's hard to make out the case. He says from the newspapers,
Yeah.
and of course, and he needs to see the details in order to deduce. And he has he says suffering from a plethora of surmise, conjecture, and hypothesis. The difficulty is to detach the framework of fact, of absolute, undeniable fact, from the embellishments of theorists and reporters, and
Hmm.
and then to see what inferences may be drawn and which are the special points upon which the whole mystery turns. And I've kind of summed this up as in order to deduce, he needs facts and then he'll
Hmm.
make inferences and then figure out the special
Mhm.
points, and then boom.
Yeah.
So
Well,
then he,
but I mean, that it shows that even then news reporting wasn't quite news reporting, that there was a lot of conjecture, commentary, in there. And makes me yearn for Edward R. Murrow and Uncle Walter Cronkite. But you know, this is the type of news that we have now. This is the type of news they had then.
yeah,
Rife with commentary and lacking complete facts.
he tells Watson that he has made a blunder. Um, well, I mean, it's the, what does he say exactly?
But oh, that well,
Yes.
that he made a blunder, that he couldn't believe that it's possible that the most remarkable horse in England could have remained concealed. Basically everybody knows this horse. So I mean,
Yeah.
it would be, oh gosh, what animal do we know? It would be like Lassie, somebody mistaking
Nobody
Lassie.
knows Lassie anymore.
Okay, I'm old some days, but okay, I don't know
Well,
what we would have in the modern era, but
that,
like
it would be, somebody would find this horse,
somebody
this
would find it.
distinctive
Yeah,
horse, and so Holmes has wasted 2 days. He thought
yeah,
somebody's going to come when he first sees the story. He's like, well, somebody will see the horse and turn it in, or nobody's going to be able to move this horse anywhere. And so he waits 2 days and nothing happens, and that's why he was so upset to begin with. But it's an acknowledgement that Holmes has begun this investigation by messing it up because he wasted 2 days.
hmm
This was going on. Um, and that's one of the reasons he has to get down there to see the scene. Um, and he then enumerates all. Now we get Holmes instead of the usual client, Colonel
hmm
Ross, telling what has happened, and he
hmm
goes through all the facts with Watson as if as the client usually would. Um, and it's Silver Blaze was the favorite of this race, so people didn't want in the race. So there was a motive to get Silver Blaze. Um, if people notice that he when he's describing Silver Blaze, he said he's from Isonomy stock, Isonomy. Isonomy was an actual famous
hmm
racehorse at the time that Doyle is inserted in there. Like he is one of the horses descended from that horse.
Yeah. And again, Doyle putting kind of again setting the story in, the real world, just trying to once again triangulate things
Yeah.
in order to lend credibility to his stories and again blur that line between fantasy and fiction, or fantasy and reality.
And he's also creating a fair play mystery here. He's giving, through Sherlock is giving us the setup. He's giving us the clues, and then we'll get more clues just as Sherlock gets them. So we can follow along and see if perhaps we could solve this story. I mean, I don't know at what point that becomes a thing for mystery readers. I
Mhm,
think it doesn't happen until more the turn of the century, but we see that seeds being set for that here is that
mhm,
an author laying out things that you could perhaps put together yourself and figure out the crime along with the uh the detective. um One of the things he mentioned, just the details that he mentions here that'll wind up being
mhm,
clues for people. It's the maid brings the food, and it's a dish of curried mutton. Holmes
mhm.
already knows that specific dish
Yep.
um, that is given to them. He tells how Fitzroy Simpson comes looking for a tip from the stable hand and doesn't,
Mhm,
get one. Um, and he is the one that has been arrested now.
mhm.
Um, and
They look suspicious.
he runs away when they say they're getting the dog, and then he runs away.
Yep.
So it's the first mention of the dog that will come
Yep.
up. And Straker leaves during the night. One of the stable hands, Hunter, is drugged. The horse is gone. Straker's found with a thigh wound. He's holding a bloody knife, and he's holding the cravat for Fitzroy Simpson, which will, implicate him.
Mhm.
And he kind of finishes all of this up with the uh the mention that Inspector Gregory, well, maybe I don't know if he finishes it up, but Inspector Gregory is on the case.
Ah, yes, Inspector Gregory.
And this is his first story. I looked it up, and I thought like I may have seen it before,
Yep.
but not. This is his first time that, and I think the only time that
Well,
Inspector.
it's Gregory, and then you were probably in your head confabulating him with Greg's son.
Ah, Greg's son. That's why I was thinking.
Because it's from from Sign of Four when Gregson illustrator Anthony Jones are on the case. Yeah, essentially. So yeah, but yeah, Gregory, this is I think his one and only appearance. But he's at least, but at the very least, Holmes thinks that he's extremely competent, and so that in itself is an improvement.
Extremely competent, but were he but gifted with imagination,
Yeah,
he might
competent, but
rise.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's the thing that Holmes is awful saying. And we'll see that, and then it'll get reinforced later. He'll reinforce it with Watson and how Gregory couldn't figure this out
yeah,
because he just looks
lack
at
of
what's in front of
imagination.
him and doesn't use his imagination. So,
Doesn't imagine what could be or what might be
yeah.
as compared to what he just sees.
And after he gives Watson this whole, rundown of the case, Watson has a question, which I love. Or I'm sorry, Holmes asks for Watson's opinion,
Hmm.
first of all. Um, and there you have it all in a nutshell, Watson. And if you can give me any light, I shall be infinitely obliged to you. Um,
Oh yes.
and Watson has one, and Watson does have a question. Do you have that there?
Oh, it is, or sorry, is it not possible? I
Uh-huh.
suggested that the incised wound upon Straker may have been caused by his own knife in the convulsive struggles in which follow any brain injury. I mean, valid question, very good medical question. Thank you, Holmes, for using Watson for medical reasons.
Yes, and it's all, but it also gets like Watson, like it might not have happened that way, but just the fact that he could have wounded himself. He has a thigh wound. There is a bloody knife. This might not
Yeah,
be someone who's wounded him in a fight. This is, so they don't have to necessarily look for somebody who's been wounded by Straker's knife. Straker may have just wounded himself with that. Uh,
exactly. Yeah, if you pull out a knife, and as someone who tends to carry, if you pull out a knife, you're likely to be stabbed by it yourself. So you have to be very skilled with it, and that's always been the kind of the philosophy that I've taken is, am I prepared to be sliced by my own weapon?
yeah.
Yeah.
And it is, Holmes says it's more than possible. It is probable. So he
Mhm.
agrees with this right away. And I like this kind of, he loves bouncing things off Watson. He did this in The Man with the
Mhm.
Twisted Lip too, where he's like, let me tell you the whole thing here. And then what do you think? And
Yeah.
Watson make a couple comments, and they might not necessarily solve it for Sherlock. They're not going to, but it
Yeah.
does get Sherlock to think about certain points and further him along. And he
I mean,
recognizes that.
and that's exactly Watson's purpose is to be able to to do that. This is actually one of the reasons why I, as a therapist, consult my colleagues. If I have a conundrum with a case, I always ask my colleagues because they may not necessarily know the right answer because they don't know the client to the degree that I know them, but they often have some really interesting insights and perspectives that maybe I didn't consider.
Hmm. They get to the train station, and
Mhm.
they're met by a tall, fair man with lion-like hair and beard and curiously penetrating light blue eyes. And this is Gregory,
Yep.
Inspector Gregory, and then a small, alert person, very neat and dapper, in a frock coat and gaiters with trim little side whiskers and an eyeglass. Uh,
Mhm.
and that's Colonel Ross, the well-known sportsman, that Holmes doesn't take a liking to right off the bat. Um,
Mhm.
but they've met him there. Gregory's got him. Gregory's on top of it. He's like, okay, here's the carriage. Let's go. I'll take you right to the scene of the crime, right to the stables and the scene of the crime, so you can look at everything here. Uh,
Mhm.
and Holmes has a series of questions. Well, Gregory first thinks that it must be Simpson, and
Mhm.
this is why. But then Holmes kind of has a series of questions that Holmes agrees, and he's like, "Yeah, I think you're right, but but of course, a clever counsel will tear it all to rags. You know,
Hmm.
why would he take the horse out of the stable? If he wished to injure it, why would he not do it there? What has a duplicate key been found? Who sold him the
Yeah.
opium?
Yeah.
You know, the whole everything that is here is they have no answers for
It's circumstantial evidence.
circumstance, and we know how Holmes feels about circumstantial evidence, which is
Hmm.
uh forget the story that he starts talking. It's at Boscombe Valley. It's Boscombe Valley when he talks about you can't rely on circumstantial evidence. Somebody can correct me on that if I am wrong.
Well, that's what the group chat is for on the feed. So
Sherlockians are for. So let me
there's
tell
that too.
you.
We are very good at that.
Oh, I love it. And Gregory also tells him a new element has been introduced into the case, and that there's a group of Romani people in the area. They always get blamed. They're in the
Always gotta
area and
blame the Romani.
they must be involved somehow. Um, and they're searching, they're searching for them now. So
Hmm.
they're because they were encamped on a Monday night within a mile of the spot where the murder took place.
Therefore, they must be involved.
Yeah. So
Ugh. Racial
that's
profiling.
his new, you know, his, kind of new development. But uh they reach the stables, and it says we all sprang out with the exception of Holmes, who continued to lean back with his eyes fixed upon the sky in front of him, entirely absorbed in his own thoughts. It was only when I touched his arm that he roused himself with a violent start and
Hmm.
stepped out of the carriage. And then he says I was daydreaming, but Watson says there was a gleam in his eyes and a suppressed excitement in his manner which convinced me, used as I was to his ways, that his hand was upon a clue, though I could not imagine where he had found it. Um,
Ah, yes.
He's figured. I mean, we'll find out later. It's the cur. This is the moment when he thinks of the curried mutton. Wait, curried mutton.
Hmm.
That specific detail he knows is important at this point because it's needed for the opium.
Hmm.
Disguise the opium, and
Exactly.
now, now that he's got something, one of these kind of special facts that could lead to something.
Hmm.
Now he wants to go, and the first thing he wants to do is look at the contents of Straker's pockets, to
Yeah.
see what other facts, inferences, special points he can find. And we're all, as readers of mysteries now, this is where we're looking at the clues. Um, and before we get to the clues, let me take this moment to thank all of you for watching this episode. As a nonprofit organization, the Rosenbach Museum and Library depends on the generosity of friends and supporters like you to keep this program free and accessible to hundreds of fellow Sherlockians worldwide. I hope you will consider supporting the Rosenbach and Sherlock Mondays by donation, which you can do so at our website, or by becoming a member. Membership gives you free museum admission, discounts on programs and courses, and exclusive invitations to member-only events. You can learn more about how to become a member on our website. Part of our membership is early access to programs and course registrations. We've got a bunch of lots of great in-person and online programs and courses coming up. You can find them at our website, and the courses are really great. Monica, I'm teaching a course on Dracula using our great, Bram Stoker notes for Dracula and our
Oh, those were so
Dracula
beautiful.
collection. That's an online course and it's just about full. So if you want to take a course that I will lead, you better register soon. There's also a weekly Ulysses Weekly with Robert Barry, who's a great illustrator of Ulysses, been illustrating it for years in comic book form, and he also teaches Ulysses at University of Penn
Hmm.
and on his own, and he's done several courses for us at the Rosenbach. It's going to be a great course for the book. You always said like, oh yeah, I'll read Ulysses one of these days. this is how you read it, with a group of people together that meet frequently and also connected to a place that has the complete manuscript of Ulysses. So this is the way you read it. You'll finish it before Bloomsday on June 16th, and then you can celebrate Bloomsday with us. And if you take the course and you're in the Philadelphia area, you get to read at Bloomsday on June 16th for the Rosenbach and our big day-long festival. A lot of fun. There's a Robert Burns course coming up. There's a Virginia Woolf course that is just about full. I think it's got 2 slots left in it. So lots of great stuff. Check us out online, engage in other programs with us, other paid programs, and see what we have to offer for you. You can also join the Facebook group page, Sherlock Mondays, where we post lots of, news and links and conversation and fun. I just put up a bunch of pictures that I took, or pictures of people and me at the last BSI weekend, where we have an audio podcast version of the show. Look for the Rosenbach podcast, Sherlock Mondays, wherever you get your podcasts. They drop 1 a week after the video ones. You can always write to me at epettit@rosenbach.org, EPETTIT at rosenbach.org. I love to hear from you guys, many of you write to me. People are still asking about Sherlock Mondays merchandise. It is coming. We had to change our whole process of how we do things and the show, and it's fine, but it's just that it's taken me longer to put it all together. So, but it's going to come together, and there will be Sherlock Mondays, t-shirts, glasses, stickers, things like that.
Because I need more glassware.
Yes, you do. And there will be a Hound of the Baskervilles show when Sherlock Mondays ends. It is going to be a pay-only show. And we will work through Hound of the Baskervilles in 8 episodes with all of the same co-hosts in the Mondays in May and June. The registration will get posted soon. Just doing the final details on that, and then that will be available for you to register. And I hope you will all come on that little biblio venture with me as well. All right. Back to the story. The contents of Straker's pockets. I have to talk about
of course. Of course. Go ahead.
An ADP briar root pipe, and a pouch of sealskin with half an ounce of long cut Cavendish and a bunch of other stuff. I just stopped right there. Like, ooh, wait, he's got a pipe and tobacco. What's all about? The ADP
briar,
pipe,
baby.
yeah, and it's a briar pipe, and briar is the most common pipe. Briar root, best briar root generally comes from France, actually, several places will tell you they have the best. I think the St. Claude briar is though well thought of. But ADP, there's lots of. Let's just say that a few companies have been proposed of what Doyle was actually meaning, if he was actually really meaning an actual pipe company, but we don't really know. It could fit a few different ones, but none of them exactly. Like there was no known ADP pipe that is actually this kind of pipe. No, it's just there. You can find some pipe companies where those initials work in some way. And the Cavendish is a type of tobacco that, well, it winds up being a confusing term now. There was Cavendish is actually a process of curing the tobacco. Originally, it was with rum in the 17th century, and then they would roll it, and then they would cut it into slices. Now it's basically you kind of add sugar to it, and it's heat and steam pressure. And then you cut it up, and that's how you get Cavendish. So it's a sweet flavored tobacco, but now companies just kind of call Cavendish for anything kind of sweet flavor. They don't even worry about the cut or the way it was cured. Sometimes they actually add flavorings to a kind of a sweet tobacco after they've done this Cavendish process to it, but that's what Cavendish tobacco is. I know. Everybody's like, thanks, Ed. That was, more than
it's helpful just because, we do need to know these things. I mean, it's actually important within the context of the story and, and this universe. Plus, I mean, who knows? We could someday this may come in handy at a trivia contest.
Yes. So, There are other things that he has though that don't have to do. We know what John Straker smoked, but
Hmm.
what else do we find out? And one of the things he has is this little knife,
Oh,
a
yes.
very singular knife. And Watson, this knife is surely in your line.
Oh, yes. That's what we call a cataract knife.
Yeah. And Watson tells him what it is. He gets to use his medical knowledge to identify the cataract knife, which I like a lot. That
Oh,
Watson's
yes.
again in this investigation. I mean,
I'm
this
I'm
happens.
loving I'm loving that he's finally using Watson, his medical friend, as a medical
What
reference.
happens in the very beginning? Does he ask him? He doesn't ask him anything in Study in Scarlet, but he certainly doesn't sign a four when he asks him to, look at the body and
Oh, yeah.
see how then and confirm
That
that he
just
was
doesn't
able.
happen very
Yeah.
often. So I
Uh,
rejoice when it
yeah.
happens. Just because, I mean, well, what we are dealing with, oh gosh, Nigel Bruce. Like I'm responding, I think, emotionally because of the Nigel Bruceness, and I know I have a friend of mine who's an ardent defender of Nigel Bruce as Watson, but because Watson was kind of Bubis Britannicus, or at least portrayed
Yeah.
in that way, it's always nice when it's like, no, Watson was a medical man. He was a man of
Stuff.
intelligence.
Yeah.
Look, he does things. He knows things. He's useful.
Yes. But much like Inspector Gregory or some of the other police, that he lacks that imagination. He can't make
Hmm.
that leap, that inferential leap that Holmes does in
Exactly.
the stories. So there we go.
Yeah.
There's also a receipt in Straker's pockets, and it
Mm.
was from a milliner's for a William Derbyshire. Uh,
Yep.
and for 20 guineas, the for account for 37 pounds 15 made out by Madame Le Sourier of Bond Street, uh,
Hmm.
for a dress. So 20 guineas is rather heavy for a single costume, Holmes
Hmm.
remarks. So, and why does he have a receipt for this without his name on it in his pocket? Um,
Yep.
he uh Mrs. Straker says that Derbyshire was a friend of her husband, so sometimes his letters were addressed here. Sometimes they got letters addressed to someone else, and he was like, "Oh, that's my friend. That's for me. Don't worry." Man, poor Mrs. Straker didn't put that together, right? So,
Mm.
well, he then Holmes then before he leaves, he even says to he even tests this out, and he asks Mrs. Straker, surely I met you in Plymouth at a garden party some little time ago. You're mistaken. Oh, no, you were wearing that dove-colored silk. And she's like, no, I never had that kind of dress. So Holmes is
Yeah.
confirming that this dress wasn't made for her.
Yes.
This will put him on the right track. He's already putting together, he's already correctly read this clue and
Yep.
found the motive for Straker
Mm.
without telling us,
Oh, yes. Naughty,
without
naughty
telling them
Straker.
either.
Yes. Never keep, if you're going to do bad, never keep your receipts that you're doing bad.
Kept the receipt. Well, he had a story to back it up. He's a friend of mine. He said, I get
Friend of
mail and then
mine.
I give it to him.
What's
So,
that strawberries and champagne for? Oh, that's for a friend of mine.
um, all right, now they go out um, to the scene of the crime, where the body was found. And Gregory knows how to treat a crime scene. Usually Holmes is complaining about everybody trampling all over the crime scene before he gets
Yep.
there, but Gregory's had the mat laid out that everybody will stand on and look, and he's thoroughly investigated, and Holmes is impressed with that. Except Holmes still finds, oh, he even has one of the boots with Straker wore. He's got a cast of the horseshoe from Silver Blaze. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
but Holmes finds a wax vesta half burned.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and Gregory's upset that he didn't find it, but Holmes says, I was looking for it. So, you expected
Hmm.
me. I only saw it because I was looking for it. For those who might not know, a wax Vesta is a match. That's
Hmm.
what it is. I used to use only Swan Vestas as matches when I smoked my pipes for many years. Um, and then I think they became unavailable where I was getting them, and I never kept up getting them. They're still you can still get them. I think they might be expensive in America. They come from England, but a wax Vesta was what it was generally a little piece of wood, but it was heavily waxed
Oh, interesting.
and the lighted and matches were called vestas. This goes back to the Roman goddess of the hearth. The home
Mm.
fire was Vesta, and
Right.
the kind of word kind of gets connected with fire, and it becomes the little match.
Well, Kleenex gets generalized and and yeah.
And people don't know that Kleenex was the Roman goddess of, no, I'm kidding.
Facial tissues.
Yes, of runny noses. And now we call that, how about that? Um, so well, Holmes finds this and then they're like, okay, well, let's go back and talk. And he's like, I think I'm gonna go for a little walk.
Yeah, gonna go for a walk. Gonna look at some clues. Gonna ponder some things.
So and I'll take the horseshoe for good luck. I'll put that in my pocket. Um, doesn't want to tell them what he's doing. He wants to go off and look at something without them knowing he's looking at it. He doesn't he like he, and this is we'll see this frequently when he goes out in disguise. He leaves Watson at home. A little later in this story, he'll leave Watson while he goes and talks to Silas Brown.
Hmm.
Holmes prefers to go off by himself to do all that. I mean, if he could have no one there, I'm sure he would like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, he likes to do his investigating by himself. It's good to have Watson here to ask some questions for, to run things, by him, maybe other people to answer questions or show him things, but he really does like to be on his own when he investigates. Doesn't want the interference of Colonel Ross with his monocle looking like the Monopoly millionaire guy.
There's yes, I love it. Actually, the Monopoly guy, by the way, does not have a monocle.
Oh, he
Uh,
doesn't?
no, no.
Why do I think that?
Yeah, well, actually, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. Yeah, you must be the Monopoly. I think that's the reason at this point. But
Interesting.
no, but I mean, okay, so I mean, if we're thinking about things, I mean, it's easier to investigate and move as a single entity versus as a duo. And so leaving Watson behind on things where Holmes, we'll just say speed and stealth might be the most necessary, would make sense. I know I travel a heck of a lot faster by myself than I do with someone else, but I also prefer to travel, with a companion just because of safety and someone to share the adventure with and such. But there are times that it's advantageous to be solo. So I can appreciate why Holmes would choose to ditch Watson briefly.
Well, at first he doesn't because they're just following the tracks,
Yeah.
and Holmes, and this is where Holmes kind of demonstrates that, that he's he says we're looking for a horse, so the horse is going to go somewhere, so let's go find out where the horse went, and
Hmm.
then find the tracks, and that's what they do, and this is what Gregory doesn't do, that he only sees what's in front of him. He lacks the, imagination to go look beyond. It is the one quality which Gregory lacks. Holmes
Yes.
says. We imagined what might have happened, acted upon the supposition, and find ourselves justified. Let us proceed. I like how you weed all that. Like me and Watson figured out. We imagined, no, Holmes imagined it. Watson's just along for the ride. He brought him in.
Well, but Watson was useful.
Brought him
So,
in. He brought him into this. That was nice. Um, the tracks lead back to Capleton, which I recently discovered in some editions it's Mapleton.
that's the one that I'm looking at right now is Mapleton.
Yeah, and it's actually Capleton in the Strand, and
Hmm.
for some, or no, it was Mapleton in the Strand, but it's actually Capleton, and it was
Hmm.
published as a book form in America because,
Interesting.
and but I don't know if there is a manuscript of Silver Blaze somewhere that can be consulted for that. But the text, I think Capleton is accepted, Capleton with a C. But I can't tell you why it's accepted. I can't tell you the authority of that. Um,
Yeah,
well, that's where the stables are, where they go. That's where the horse wound up being. And they the trainer Silas Brown comes out and tells them to get off. And then Holmes leaned forward and whispered something in the trainer's ear. He started violently and flushed to the temples. It's a lie, an infernal lie. And then Holmes is like, okay, well, let's go
yeah,
talk about it. And so he has tracked he's tracked and then he goes in and talks to Brown, and when they come back out, Brown is like docile. um
exactly.
and then they have
He
this,
knows what's up.
yeah, and they have this little cryptic dialogue here. Oh no, there shall be no mistake, it shall be there. Should I change it first or not? And then Holmes is like,
Oh,
don't.
there shall be
Don't.
no mistake. It shall
Yeah.
be there. Yeah,
So
yes, no,
um
don't.
and what he's talking about, if you didn't catch it the first time, is like, should I change the horse back into take the paint off so it looks like Silver Blaze again with the white
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
the one leg and the
Well,
forehead.
what is the classic phrase? I can never resist the touch of the dramatic. So
Yeah.
this is Holmes looking for a little bit of drama in the reveal. And that's why he wants it there is just drama.
Yep. And we get this now. He explains to Watson, well, the I saw Silas Brown's boot. That's the square-toed, boot we were looking for. Um, you know, he obviously saw the horse and he started to take it back, and then he realized, what? I've got the horse my horse is going against. I'll take him. And he figured he was going to hide it. Um, and he assures, he says, Watson, he's got to, he knows his only hope of mercy is to produce it safe now. Now that he's been caught, we can trust him to bring the horse back. And
Exactly. Once a criminal's been caught, it's like, either we know it, we have proof. You can make it worse for yourself by doubling down, or you could just do what we ask.
but Holmes doesn't want to tell Ross because he doesn't think he'll show mercy in the
Mhm.
case. And then he has this little paragraph here. You want to read that? The matter does not rest with Colonel Ross.
Ah, yes, the matter does not rest with Colonel Ross. I follow my own methods and tell as much or as little as I choose. That is the advantage of being an unofficial. Um, you know, I don't know whether you observed it, Watson, but the Colonel's manner has been just a trifle cavalier to me. And I'm inclined now to have a little amusement at his expense. Say nothing to him about the horse. As I said, a little touch of the dramatic.
But I also love this. That's the advantage of being unofficial.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I do what I
that
choose. I
he's
do
not
whatever I want.
bound. Oh, he's not bound by the law to, I
I don't
mean,
have to have people arrested. I don't have to reveal that they've committed crimes, as we've seen in some of the
basically,
cases.
yeah, well, I mean, what? I'm not employed by the police to supply their deficiencies.
Hmm.
One of my favorite lines from, Blue Carbuncle, but I mean, it holds.
And we're told that there's no manuscript available for this story. And um, the he says he just doesn't like Ross either. He says his
Yeah.
manner has just been a trifle cavalier to me. Um, that Holmes doesn't like when people behave that way, cavalierly, perhaps. Uh, they And then Holmes says, we're going to go back to London by the night train.
Hmm.
I was thunderstruck by my friend's words, Watson says. Um, I'm sorry he didn't say what ineffable twaddle. That would have been what ineffable twaddle going back to London. Um, and But that's what Holmes tells the colonel and the inspector he's doing. We're going back by the Midnight Express, and the colonel's lips curled in a sneer. The
Yeah,
colonel's thinking,
dude,
like,
dude was perturbed.
you don't even know, you can't even solve this. But Sherlock asks for a photograph of Straker before he leaves, and he also says, I have a question which I should like to put to the maid, and asks the maid something, um, which I forget what it is. What is it? What does he ask the maid? We find out later.
Yeah, let me find that. I have a question for the maid. Let's see. I must be disappointed. A horse will run.
I just because I like to know like at what point he's putting these things together. It's about the curried mutton and who knows
Yeah, that's
what it
right.
was. That's what it is.
That's why I was just like, yeah,
Who would know
it's
why what that it was curried mutton?
yeah. Well,
Um,
'cause yeah, I mean, it's a dish that's strong enough to mask the flavor of the opium. Drug and alcohol counselor, I will acknowledge, it's got a flavor, that very distinct, very strong flavor. So curried mutton is one of the few things that is actually strong enough to overpower it and mask it.
the curry, I imagine.
Yes. Well, the mutton too, just because gamey,
I don't know.
yeah. I've my husband makes lamb a lot. So yeah,
Mutton.
mutton.
Um,
And mutton is gamier than lamb. So
they but two more things before he leaves. One huge, but the first thing he a sudden idea occurred to Holmes, and he asks the one of the stable lads about the sheep in the paddock and that anything
mhm.
amiss of them of late. And he's like, yeah, some of the three of them have gone lame. Holmes is like,
Yes.
I so solved this. I can't believe how much I solved this. He was
I think it's
extremely pleased. He chuckled. He rubbed his hands together like,
yeah,
I got
slam
another one.
dunk. Yeah, he knows that he's slam dunked this case.
He says, a long shot Watson, a very long shot, said he, pinching my arm. He's pinching Watson. Like, woo! I mean, he is so excited that he has come up with this. He has solved this case that he can't believe. You
In
know,
in modern day, I would expect him to squee.
yes.
Squee.
And then here we go. I'll give you the lead question. Is there any other point to which you would wish to draw my attention?
Ah, to the curious incidents of the dog of the nighttime.
The dog did nothing in the nighttime.
That was the curious incident.
Mm, that's
Oh,
a great
yes.
line. What a great line. It's no wonder that has continued. It's, I mean, it's super clever that, that it's that kind of apps. There was an absence of something, right? And you should have noticed that. It's Doyle's firing on all cylinders in this story. That the little bit of the little break he took after Copper Beaches to write some other things, to go to Norway and go skiing and all before he sits down and writes the next batch of stories. He is rested up just enough that he's just is really on top of his game in
Yeah.
telling this story and the plot and all the little details and the clever things like that exist in this story. Well, they go home and then they come back for the Wessex Cup. 4 days later, they come back for the race for the Wessex Cup, which you raced in. You had a horse in the Wessex Cup, Monica.
Nay.
Oh, um,
Yeah.
um, Holmes tells Ross that like Ross is like, I still haven't seen my horse, and he's like, but you'd know him if you saw him, right? Like just the Colonel was angry. Holmes is just
Oh.
fun. Like, I've solved this. You all don't know what's going on, but I do. Apparently, Silver Blaze is still the favorite, even though everybody knows the horse that they've got for Silver Blaze, that's not
It's
Silver
not Silver
Blaze,
Blaze.
but it's
Exactly.
still the favorite for the race. Um, and it's not the right coloring, and they have the list of horses here. There's no spider in there. Well, there would be now. So
There's a spider now.
yes. Um, and it's 5-4 against Silver Blaze, 15-5 against Despero. I don't know horse racing stuff, so
Odds.
yeah. Um, they um they watch the race. Of course, Silver Blaze wins, but that's not my horse, cried the owner, you know, uh,
Yeah.
even though he's won. And um, well, he says that's not my horse. Then he wins the race, and they all go around to look at the horse together. And he says to him, Holmes says, you have only to wash his face and his leg in spirits of wine, and you will find that he is the same old Silver Blaze as
Yep.
ever. Monica, what is spirits of wine? Do you know?
Spirits of wine. Actually, I this is one of those times that I don't know, but you can
Brandy!
conjecture.
Brandy to the rescue once again.
Oh my God, I am a moron. Brandy.
It's
It's
distilled
Watson's.
wine.
It's always
Yeah,
brandy.
it
Brandy and
is.
brandy and
Yep.
brandy and
It's
brandy and more brandy.
it's not just for medicine, you can clean your horse with it. So, that if you just put a little brandy on and it will
Oh
you
God.
take my breath away, says Colonel Ross. Um,
Oh my gosh.
and Holmes just says, he was in the hands of a faker and I, sent him over. So, you're all set. Um, and then and then we get this is like an abacus. This is like a who's on first routine. Suddenly
Yep.
that happens, right? We'll do this,
Hmm.
right? I'll start at the end line. You would do me a greater still if you could lay your hands on the murderer of John Straker.
I have done so.
You have got him? Where is he then?
He is here
Here? Where?
in my company at the present moment.
I quite recognize that I am under obligations to you, Mr. Holmes, but I must regard that you have just said what you have just said as either a very bad joke or an insult.
I assure you that I have not associated you with the crime, Colonel. The real murderer is standing immediately behind you.
The horse! They both
A
cry.
horse.
But I just like that, you have got him. Where is he then? He is
He's
here.
here
Here where? Who's on first?
behind you.
What is the name of the player on first base? So
Silver Blaze.
it's the horse, and now Holmes reveals all. This is all the stuff that he has put together. Well, first he says, wait. There's the bell. I'm gonna go bet on the next race.
Well, you're at the track. I mean, and it's kind of funny because there's the bell. There's the long-standing theory that Watson is the one that eventually develops a gambling problem. But oh look, Holmes can't resist
Yeah.
putting a bet on a horse. Okay, there might be a paper in that.
Well, now it's also, but Watson seems to know nothing about horse racing. Did I just read about this or hear somebody talking
Yes,
about this?
I have an entire presentation about this
Yeah,
and paper that's in actually there's a BSI press book called Upon the Turf, and I wrote an essay dealing with Watson's gambling problem from a clinical
that's
perspective.
it. Yeah,
And I mean it's fascinating, but I mean it's all about horse racing, available through the Baker Street Irregulars website through BSI Press. So Upon the Turf, edited by my classmate Ira.
and so this quote then from Memories and Adventure from Conan Doyle too, probably, where he owns up to I'm reading it out of
So
the
yes, read it out of there.
he confessed that Doyle wrote, I've never been a racing man, and yet I'd ventured to write Silver Blaze, in which the mystery depends upon the laws of training and racing. The story is all right, and Holmes may have been at the top of his form, but my ignorance cries aloud to heaven. I read an excellent and very damaging criticism of the
Hmm.
story in some sporting paper, written clearly by a man who did know, in which he explained the exact penalties which have come upon everyone concerned if they had acted as I described. Half would have been in jail, and the other half warned off the turf forever.
Yep.
However, I have never been nervous about details, and one must be masterful sometimes.
I love it. I love it.
Uh,
It's kind of like, oh, I got everything wrong. Whoops. Yeah,
doesn't
whatever.
matter.
It's
So
a good story.
it is, and that's
Yeah.
what it is. And Holmes reveals all the details here that, you know, he says first, any theories which I first had from the newspapers were erroneous. He went thinking that it must have been Fitzroy Simpson, but
Yep.
soon realized it wasn't. And then this is when he says it was the immense significance of the curried mutton, that's the
Hmm.
first thing that he realized. And then the powdered opium is by no means tasteless. So
Yep.
that's why curried mutton was necessary. But who would have known that the person poisoning him had to know that it was curried mutton? So that's what he asked the maid about. And he finds out it's only the husband and wife. Clearly, the husband is the only one with a motive, and he knows the motive because of the receipt, and then he follows that up with the picture of Straker, and he shows it to the milliner, and they're like, "Yeah, that's William Derbyshire." Um,
Mhm.
so Straker's been leading a double life. He has another woman, family, whatever, in London.
Oh, that scoundrel.
And so this is why he needs to fix the race so then he can make a bundle, or he's being paid to do it. We don't know that, do we?
I don't believe we are.
I think
Uh,
he just
but
knows
then,
that if he
yeah.
throws the race, he can make a bundle betting against Silver Blaze.
It's sports gambling. That's exactly the motivation for lots of sports
Yep.
teams over the years. So why not in horse racing?
And then before deciding, I had grasped the significance of the silence of the dog.
Ah,
And the
yes.
fact that the dog knows Straker, so it's not going to bark when he comes. And that has to be the dog. It had to be someone who knew, the dog knew.
Mhm.
So he's fixed it all. He's figured it all out. Villain, scoundrel, cried the colonel. He's so angry. He doesn't get to,
Mhm.
he doesn't get any, he can't punish anybody now. Um,
Yeah, his anger gets displaced, or I mean, maybe not quite displaced, but at least, he's got a dead body to continue to beat, I guess, when it comes to, who's to blame? Oh, well, Silver Blaze killed Straker in self-defense. That's pretty awesome, actually.
and Doyle had said, this was in that A Day with Dr. Conan Doyle piece, and,
Hmm.
and I posted this in the Facebook page. Uh, he thought, and he says in this article, he says, I thought the opening of the next series of Sherlock Holmes, which is the Silver Blaze story, was of such an unsolvable character that that Doyle had positively bet his wife a shilling that she would not guess the true solution of it until she got to the end of the chapter. Um,
Ooh.
can you remember reading for this the first time? And did you? Yeah, it's so hard for like people who are really in the Sherlock and have read it
Yeah.
so many times to remember
Yeah, that's
this.
that's the downside is that I'm trying to remember back to when I was 11. I'm not old, but that's 31 years ago.
I'll put
So
this out
it's
there to people in now in the live chat did you guess the ending to this or any parts of it, to put it in the live chat, or just if you're watching the video in general, put it in the comments. I'd love to know if there were people who like, yes or no, like, no, I didn't know at all, or, well, I thought that it was Straker hurting the horse or something, or the horse must have killed him, so not the Fitzroy Simmons is a stick, which I didn't mention earlier, the Penang
Mhm.
lawyer.
Oh yes, the Penang
Mentioning
lawyer.
um, which is it's just a weighted stick. It's also in is it in later home story? Yeah, we didn't have one yet, but it's in Hound of the Baskervilles actually.
Yes,
Um,
yes. But
but
it's a weighted stick, but if I recall correctly, it's actually made from a specific plant that actually grows, and it's got like a knob on the top. Sherlockian and fellow BSI member Denny Dobry, who happens to have probably the best 221B sitting room in at least in America. Sorry, Chuck. This one is off the hook. My friend Chuck Kovacic, who just got his BSI investiture, is also one of the Baker Street builders, people who will recreate the sitting rooms in their houses. Denny's is in Reading, Pennsylvania, and oh man, it is off the hook, amazing. And he periodically at conferences will do a presentation about the Penang lawyer.
mhm.
So I've learned a little bit about it, and someday I will have it for the Sherlockian collection.
It's the stick that Fitzroy Simmons had, and it is the OED defines it as apparently with jocular reference to the use of the weapon in settling disputes at Penang, which is, in Southeast Asia. But it's
With
also
the
been
plant. Yeah.
suggested that the name is a corruption of the Malay Penang liar, which is the
Hmm.
wild areca, which is the wood that they would use to make these. So
Hmm.
it could actually be a corruption of just the actual wood that sounds like Penang lawyer. um, that has been used. So,
Mhm.
that's but that it seemed like, and it was such a not quite a red herring, but it was such it seemed like the obvious weapon that was
Mhm.
used to crush his skull because this guy had a heavy stick that could have done that. And it
Exactly.
turns out the horse just kicked him in the head. So
Yeah.
there we go. Well,
I almost want to take a look at the bruising, and to see if there was like a horseshoe shape with the bruising.
and then this is the one odd part about this story. I still think it's brilliant. I think it's
Mhm.
perfectly, constructed. But at the end, uh,
Mhm.
Holmes reveals everything. When I returned to London, I called upon the milliner, and he spends and the colonel says, "You have explained all but one thing. Where was the horse?" And then Holmes just says, it bolted and it was cared for by one of your neighbors. We'll have a little amnesty in that direction, I think. And then, oh, let's get off. And if you care to smoke a cigar in our rooms, Colonel, I shall be happy to give you any other details which might interest you. I thought it was odd that now he's friendly to Colonel Ross. I,
Um, I think maybe. I mean I agree, that it's odd, but I'm thinking maybe okay, he's had his little bit of fun.
yeah,
Ross is now worshiping at the altar of the brilliant Sherlock Holmes. So maybe now that Ross is no longer acting like a jerk, that maybe Holmes is like, yeah, maybe we'll entertain this fella because he's worshiping at my altar.
I think he's so happy with himself. He's so like overjoyed that he has been able
Hmm.
to do this. He may also have won a couple dollars on the other races. So who knows? Maybe
Perhaps.
he's got some inside info going on now too. Like Holmes is.
Well, yeah, if he bet on Silver Blaze, which one should hope, I'm sure he made a bundle.
Yeah. And but he also wanted to see the other races, so he might have been betting on them too. But the but I'm assuming he's so overjoyed that he's been able to find the little seemingly insignificant details and put it together, and he's all happy with himself. That's what he is.
Mhm.
He's overjoyed. Even like Colonel Ross is going to come and have a cigar with him.
Yes, let's sit down and smoke. Actually, Ed, why don't we do that sometime in April in Philly?
We will. We will. I thought about smoking a cigar this, one, but or switching from the pipe to the cigar, but I just figured I'm gonna stay with my pipe tonight, which I
Fair
like better.
point.
Well, these are two great stories in a row, Copper Beaches and Silver
Yeah,
Blaze.
I love these. I love
Pretty
these.
tremendous that that we get these two excellent stories in a row. Um, uh, I'm looking at the chat to see if anybody. Now, nobody like quite said, "Oh, I figured it out." They could have lied. They said, of course, I did. I knew it was the horse, and I
I
knew
appreciate the honesty there. The Sherlockians in general are pretty darn honest people. If they got it, they'll admit it. If they
Yeah,
didn't get it, they will also admit it.
I did. First time I read it, knew it all. No, I didn't. I don't remember. I don't think I did at
Yeah,
all. I'm sure I was in the dark.
I will take ownership.
I
I
am.
was
Here's a
clever, but I was not that clever.
here's a question for you. Do you read mysteries in general, or watch mystery movies and try to figure it out as you go along?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the answer, if it's fair play, then of course, yes. But there are times that I well, when it comes to like mystery movies and such, there are times that just kind of based on, some contextual clues. I actually in the movie Kiss the Girls, I had not read that, or I hadn't read the book that it's based on, but I was able to, in the middle of the opening credits, figure out who the villain was. And I was very pleased with myself when I saw that. That was 16-year-old me in 97, and I'm still holding on to that little victory there. But yeah, I definitely try to figure things out. And sometimes I get close, but not exact. And it's really satisfying when it happens.
I I mean, I don't know if it's like compensating because I camp. I purposefully do not. I honestly don't want to figure it out because I like I want to get surprised and I want to
Yeah.
get the big reveal. So I try not to think about it. So that said, if I do figure out a mystery early on, it's
Hmm.
totally the creator's fault. Like they
Hmm.
made it too obvious. So but I try not to figure them out because I like the big reveal at the end.
Yeah.
I want to be surprised. I want to be wowed by the figuring out thing. But I don't encounter many people like that. Almost everybody I know does approach this genre as a puzzle and
Yeah,
likes
I
to
mean,
try to piece it together.
I also appreciate the surprise, and I mean, it kind of depends on the context. But I mean, I'm a therapist, and so part of my job is
There
like
you go.
solving puzzles, and
You're
so
trained.
it's
Yeah.
really hard to turn that off.
Yeah.
When somebody presents me with something of, oh, what might that be? What's going on here? I mean, it's just the natural curiosity that I have.
Mhm.
So, but I do appreciate that whole concept of just letting it wash over you and just enjoying the ride and enjoying the surprise.
Well, Sherlockians, thank you for joining us for episode 17 of Sherlock Mondays. I hope some of you are also wearing your Deer Stalkers or your Gorin, what with your cap
Oh,
there?
it's
Gorin Brothers?
yeah, Gorin Brothers.
Yep.
So yeah.
Monica, thank you for joining me for this one. You will return for episode 22, a whole month away, but you'll return for episode 22 for the Musgrave Ritual. That will be,
North by 10 and by 10.
yep.
Yes, I will have to regale you with my very famous flub during the Sons of the Copper Beaches. Yeah.
You have to recite that to become a master copper beadsmith.
Oh,
So
yes.
no, to become an apprentice,
Let's see, it's a
journeyman. Thank you. I should
journeyman.
know.
Yeah, yeah. Recorder, keeper
Yeah,
of records.
I've got my thing back here behind me. And anyway, everyone, our next show, episode 18, Curtis Armstrong will join me to talk about a story so gruesome that Conan Doyle cut it from the first British collection, The Adventure of the Cardboard Box. But
Ah,
of course, he included it in the American edition.
I love this, and my investiture in one of the Sherlock Holmes societies. It's called 140 Varieties of Tobacco Ash. My investiture is a half-pound box of honeydew tobacco, and you'll
Honeydew. Yeah,
understand exactly why that's disturbing
there you go. It
next.
is.
Next.
I'll explain why it's disturbing that someone actually made a honeydew
Oh, I know.
tobacco
I need
once.
this.
Like of all the tobaccos to make. But anyway, don't
Honeydew.
let the mundane title fool you, Cardboard Box. This is a grim story, but
Very.
really, really well done. Thanks to our chat, Mrs. Hudson, Brianna, for managing the live chat links. Thank you to the sponsor of Sherlock Mondays, Lisa Washington. We couldn't do these shows without the generous support of our patrons. You can support the Rosenbach through donation. Your support helps us create more programs like this and also care for our collections. You can also become a member. Membership gives you early access and discounts to programs and courses. You can find out more at our website, rosenbach.org. Let me remind you again, if you haven't already done it, to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to like these videos. And if you're listening to the audio podcast, leave us a review. Monica, until next time, farewell. Great to see you.
Much love, Ed. Good to see you, and we'll see you in a month.
Everyone, I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library, where the game is a book. Bye-bye, everyone.